All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 26 of Grid Talk Tuesday. My name's Alexander Searle. With me, joining me shortly, Kaleb Viexa and Emory Lida. But we're in for a pretty cool episode here. Some special guests that you may have saw on our social media pages. I'm not going to get into it too much because I want to surprise you all if you haven't seen our social media pages on who's going to be joining us. But that being said, we had some racing action this weekend. We had the MCC Pro-Am at the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati, and we had the IndyCar Challenge at Whiteland this past weekend, and we'll get into some of the results that we saw over there, as well as the star schedule this weekend for the night fight at Mooresville, North Carolina at Trackhouse Motorplex, and then we had some updated schedules for SCUSA that we'll get into as well. But first off, let's welcome Kaleb Vieska into the booth. Kaleb, buddy, we have Stars Night Fight this weekend. We're flying in on a Wednesday this time because it's night racing. So, how much are you looking forward to this one?
Firstly, absolutely atrocious that you butchered my last name after we've been working together for 2 years. So
What
that's
I say?
crazy. I know it was, I can't even repeat it at this point. But
Kaleb
uh,
Vieska.
yeah, there you go. Much
I
better.
got
Thank you
you.
very much, Alex. Good to be back. Good to be here with you. But yeah, we're slated to have a busy weekend. Feels a little weird. It's gonna be Wednesday whenever we get in tomorrow. And then we're flying out on a Sunday afternoon as well. The race is going to get wrapped up on Saturday night. So that's exciting, something different for us. But I wasn't able to go to the night fight last year, and I'm super excited to finally get to go this year. And it seems like it's a good event, and it always seems to be exciting.
That's right. I forgot this is your first night fight, so that's
Yeah.
actually pretty cool. This is actually the event that I got my KC debut 2 years ago at as an announcer. So
Nice.
this is actually it's a pretty cool event for me to go back to, and we don't get to go night racing very often. So I got to say, night fight is one of my favorite events that we go to, and uh, two night races in 3 weeks is pretty awesome. Emory Lida next joining us here. I mean, this is kind of like your home race almost, right? I mean, we go here often enough on the national schedule, but you get to actually stay home for most of this. And if you wanted to, you're staying at a hotel with us this weekend, but if you wanted to, you can go back to Chapel Hill. So, nonetheless, I mean, how are you feeling heading into this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of bittersweet for me because it's the first night fight, at least since they started running it at night in 2022, that I have not run. So that kind of that's a little bit difficult. It's a really awesome race to run, one of my favorites on the calendar. But it's nice to be back with the KC boys again. It's a really fun race, I think, to work. And I mean, again, it's always nice to be able to do these races in North Carolina, get to drive, not have to worry as much about all of the travel planning and everything, because ultimately I'm not too far away from any of my homes, whether it be in Chapel Hill or back actually home. So to be honest with you, I mean, it's a really fun weekend. I'm looking forward to kind of getting back into the flow of things on the broadcast side, away from the seat a little bit, and what should be a lot of fun racing this weekend.
Yeah, before we get into what we saw this weekend, bit of setting the grid for you guys. This past weekend, we had two races, like I mentioned. We had the MCC Pro Am at Cincinnati, and then we had the IndyCar Challenge at Whiteland. So I just want to quickly get into all of our race winners that we saw this past weekend. We had a bunch of them. Obviously, at MCC, we had Matt Lida win in the 206 heavy class. We had Adler Klein, Ben Lida, Will Richard, Andy Kutcher, Homer Heeman, Ben Gleberman, Larry Pegram in Pro Shifter, and then we had Carter Thompson win in the Pro Am KA 100 Senior class as well for MCC. And then at the IndyCar Challenge, we had Danny O'Gara, Liat Simonellik, Levi Wilbur, Carson Benjamin, Troy Tony, AJ Lund, Bo Laser, Travis Wilbur, Reagan Hodges, Dominic Gaddis, Evan McCorkadale, Ryan Moore, Eli Fox, Carter Bowles as your winners for all of the Pro Am uh, MCC races and an IndyCar Challenge as well. And then getting into it, we saw recently, earlier today, actually, get announced over on the SCUSA social media pages and on Kart Chaser as well. We announced it that a bit of an update to the schedule for the Summer Nats. It's now May 23rd through the 25th, compared to what the other dates were on the previous schedule. So still to be announced for the overall, races and locations that we're going to, but new dates for the Summer Nationals, May 23rd through the 25th. And then getting into what we're going to see this weekend over for the night fight. A pretty interesting schedule to say the least. And not interesting, but like in terms of different to what you expect, right? Usually we get to a racetrack at 7 or 8 o'clock and we're kicking off warm up and then we're done by 4 or 5. This time, 12 o'clock warm ups on Friday into 9 o'clock races on Friday, and then 9 o'clock races again for the Pro Shifter race to end the day on Saturday. And obviously, Thursday qualifying for the pro guys begins at 9:15 Eastern Time PM. So pretty cool. I love night racing. So I hope everyone gets their good night rest because it's gonna be a long night for especially our pro guys who don't get to leave the racetrack until later. But what stands out to you guys in the schedule?
I'll let Emory go first here.
Yeah. Okay, so the biggest thing for me is the Thursday night pro qualifying under the lights is going to be sick. Like being able to qualify kind of just the pro guys, like ending off final practice and then you go straight into pro qualifying at 9 o'clock at night. I mean, that's got to be one of the most anticipated qualifyings of the year. You have championship battles going on, particularly in the OKN category. They're going to be fun to watch. And then otherwise, I think this is actually the most similar schedule to what it was last year of any of the events so far. You have kind of warm up qualifying heat 1, heat 2 for the semi-pro guys, and obviously warm up pre-final finals on Saturday, which is pretty much the exact same layout as the night fight's been for the last 2 years. So, I mean, for me, I think this is a really good schedule. Again, I love the fact that we're building in the pro show and pro qualifying on a Thursday night. I also like kind of having the pro finals all the way at the end of the lineup on Saturday as well. I think we're going to see some really cool racing. It's late nights. It'll be late nights for us, that's for sure. But ultimately, I mean, this is going to be a really fun event.
Yeah, I really agree here with Emory. And then, looking at the schedule as well, I think Thursday and that being the qualifying date for everybody is pretty cool, especially for the pro guys under the lights. That's going to be fun. And then a noon start for Friday, and then qualifying for I guess you can say the semi-pro categories or the support categories as well on Friday is going to be good to see and have them going straight into heat racing and heat 2, and then with the pro shows with Pro Moto 1 and Moto 2 as well. So it's going to be exciting. And then obviously on Saturday, it's going to be another good day as well. And just excited to kind of get back out to North Carolina after last week. I mean, we saw night racing there, and now we get to see some shifters finally, long awaited this year so far to get back out at Trackhouse. But I'm excited to see them go at it. And I know the championship battles are definitely starting to heat up.
It's a good point you make there with the shifters over at Trackhouse. You don't get to see it very often. I think the last time we saw it on the national calendar, I want to say it was either night fight or it was either the USPKS race last year or the night fight race.
Yeah,
both around the same time last year.
USPKS
Yes. Yeah, so almost a year since we've seen shifters at Trackhouse on the national level, so that's pretty cool. And then obviously we have the OKN Stars who put on an incredible show last year, I'd say, as well. And this event again always puts on an awesome show. And Trevor, Kyle Cuthbertson, some of our photographers always get some of the coolest shots when we head into the night with the sparks flying in the air. So I'm pumped to see that. I want to clarify something real quick. I actually, for the SCUSA schedule, I'll put it back up real quick. I said summer nats, meant to say spring nats, but the dates still remain the same, May 23rd, 25th, for those events there for SCUSA. So that being said, that's been setting the grid. We're going to get right into it here. Our first guest of the night, it's the Magic Man. Welcome AJ Myers to the show here. Let's give a round of applause for AJ Myers first, guys. Here,
hey,
round of applause for AJ joining the show.
Here.
Welcome, AJ.
Thank you.
All right, let's get right into it, buddy. I mean, how are you feeling? Night fight coming up, a race that you've had that you've been quick at. I mean, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Now this is my new home track, so I could take a 10-minute drive over there right now and scope out how it's looking for you guys. But looking excited and sleeping in my own bed is always great.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was actually going to get into that there. So, new home track for you. I want to get into the history of AJ Myers because we know how quick you are on the racetrack, but you had a long history in go-karting back to when your dad raced as well. So, what kind of, besides your dad, obviously, but what got you into the sport of karting as a young kid?
My first memories were on my dad driving a shifter cart while I was on his lap holding the wheel, probably about 4 or 5 years old. Definitely not OSHA certified, but that's my memories. And then from there, he turned over the wheel to me probably in about 2006. He gave up his driving for me full time, and he was my mechanic full time. We just father and son, low budget, all across Florida for the most part.
What was that like growing up? I mean, I know everyone always dreams of having like the big team, the big tent, the mechanic, and obviously you've grown into that, and obviously with Magic later on. But growing up with your dad, I mean, how cool is it working together with literally your father?
It's cool, but it's not all it's highlights, behind the scenes. Me and my dad always get into it, and I think that's how it always goes with father and son teams. But it really brings you closer, bonding in the end of it, and I mean, the amount of times he's quit on me, I can't say I didn't deserve it. So at the end of it, we all come back and we love each other and we move on. But it's great to work with him and yeah, go up against the big boys.
And then growing up, I mean, you obviously started in the single speed stuff, and you gravitated towards the shifter class pretty early. Is that because of your dad, or what got you to say I want to go and bang some gears now?
It was my dad was always a shifter cart guy himself when he was racing. It was more so also banging our head against the wheel, going against head against the wheel, going against OGP, the old RPG team, and just something new. And I kind of took to it right away and just ran with it.
Yeah, I mean, talk to me about the kind of magic as a whole. That whole idea to go and say, what, let's become magic. I know you were checking motorsports for a while. You ran with Croc for a bit, but before we get into the magic thing, I mean, I know you and the Boyda shows have had a pretty long running together. How did that start?
Yeah, I mean, we go back to 2014 when I first met them, and then we went our separate ways for a little bit there. We were Mad Croc with me and Andrew, and then I can't take the credit for Magic. That was all Andrew, actually Roy Vanderster as well as Robbie. They started the whole Magic Cart gang, and I was actually a CRG at that time. And then once I saw them do their own thing, I was kind of a little bit jealous. I was like, wow, that's really cool. You guys are doing your own thing. And I hopped on board and tried to help grow that program as much as we could over these past couple of years.
You mentioned Andrew. I know you have a pretty funny story actually of how you met. So why don't you tell it to the people back home watching?
Yeah, no, back it was 2014. It's Florida Winter Tour in Homestead. I was running up front in the whole weekend and not necessarily winning top 3, top 5. And Andrew was on a PCR. He was struggling. He was just came up to me. We were watching some races. He came up to me and said, "Hey man, like what's the secret? Like what am I missing?" We ended up talking, BSing, and I gave him my carburetor for the LCQ. And straight from my race cart onto him, he made the race. I did take it back for the final, but after that, we kind of worked together out a deal, and I started racing with Checkered a little bit, and that's how it all started.
Every weekend I always see, you and Andrew always have smiles on your face. I know you guys work together for a majority of these weekends, but what is that like? You meet Andrew, you kind of help him out a little bit back in 2014, 2015 era, but now 2024, almost 10 years later, you're still working together on the same team. He kind of doesn't race anymore as often. What's the dynamic like under the tent now with you two?
Well, sadly this year, Andrew he's taken a mature step in his life to bigger and better things. I think he's doing some HVAC work back home, so he's not at the race as much, but he still pops his head in about once a month to a race. But going through the past 10 years, there was times, I think I had 5 different apartments maybe throughout college. Andrew's been on every one of those couches. He's been in my bed. He's been everywhere with me. We're brothers. We travel 30-hour car rides, broken down on the side, the road together. We've done it all together. We've yelled at each other, hugged each other. So we've been through it all. So I know we're all family now. So just it's nice to have 2 families.
Yeah, and then growing up, I mean, you bounced around teams a little bit, but once you got on board with the Magic Camp, what's it been like now being a driver that has to, one of your main roles besides going out there and getting wins for Magic is kind of on the developmental side as well, continuing to improve the chassis. You're doing the shifter, you're doing the KA side as well. So what's that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it all started off just kind of getting that baseline in the setup. We kind of stayed consistent on that shifter front. Some people have caught up, I think. But it's just stay on top of it. If problems arise, you have to be able to feel them and solve them. And then as far as like the KA, we've made tremendous strides over the past 2 years. This year's cart's really, really every track we go to, I'm one of the fastest carts whenever I get in the KA. This past race wasn't the best, but other than that one, you're bound to have a off race with some issues. But the package is always there, and you can look at Max Weiland as the proof. We've really built him into a really good driver, and kind of shows what the package can do.
All right. Well, I know I've asked a bunch of questions here. I know the boys got a couple as well. So, Kaleb, I think I'll hand it off to you first here.
Yeah, AJ, and I guess Alex talked about it here a little bit, and I know we kind of spoke about it as well at IAME Grands, but I think this is the first year, or I guess one of the first years that you've done full double duty, both in shifter at SCUSA and at Stars, and then obviously USPKS didn't have the shifter this year, but you were still kind of opting to do that KA package, and it was a smaller tent for you guys this year as well at USPKS. I believe it was just you and Max for some races, or just two guys. And what's that kind of been like, I guess, working on that side and doing a little bit of both this year?
Yeah. USB gas has always kind of been the lighter side for us. So that's we decided to do it, and we weren't really committed to the beginning of the whole year when we started. But after it got off to a great start, we kind of stuck to it. Stars is our main big one coming up here. We have probably numbers. We usually have about 18 drivers for this stuff. Stars really pulls them for our tent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that as well, because your guys' tent seems like like a big family. You guys got people all the way through rock, and then obviously in all the shifter classes as well, and the rock shifter as well. I guess, what's the environment like under that tent? It always seems like whenever I walk in there, it always seems like everybody's in good spirits and hard at work everywhere where you kind of walk through.
Yeah, I mean, we have kind of all levels in that tent. I mean, we have some micro drivers that's just getting started, and then if you just go into the shifter class, you have me, and there used to be Talon and Michael and all these guys. We're in the front, and then you have Annie's fighting to the front. This last race, she was the front. She was doing amazing that last time out, and then you have Tegan. She's getting better. You have Mitch Lowry. We have a whole bunch of guys just all throughout the shifter field, and so we have every level, and we're all trying to help each other. And I kind of got to set that mood and try and set the pace for everyone to go.
Yeah, and AJ, I mean, you've been around the block for the last decade or so in terms of the senior category, really, even dating back to the single speed days. And you've obviously driven a lot of different teams, like Alex has mentioned. But when you look back over the last decade or so, what differences do you see now in terms of your approach to karting compared to maybe what you were thinking about when you were 17, 18, 19 a little while ago?
That's a good question. I guess more so the perspective shifted to 18, 19. You're fighting for that opportunity to knock on the door and be ready for it. I mean, always ready, but now it's just more so some handshake agreements with some friends. If they win the lottery, we're going racing. But yeah, it's just going out there and having fun. And yeah, we do it for like a Magic. We're not doing this full time. Robbie's not full time in this. Andrew's not full time in this. I'm not full time in this. But we're good at what we do, and we know what we're doing in the karting, and we make it kind of a fun environment to try and to go win. We have all the tools we need to go win. We give ourselves what we need, and we have the skills we need. And we like to go take it to these guys that are in the shop day in and day out, and yeah, do our best.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the other things I wanted to touch on too, is like you don't do this full time. You kind of have your own separate full-time gig, and even dating back to your younger days as well, I believe you still kind of had a priority on college and other things as well. So, when you kind of compare yourself to maybe some of the other pro shifter guys that we see, like, that come over from Europe or that have kind of full-time gigs in the US, how difficult has it been over the years to kind of maintain that level of form to where you're still, I mean, as good as anyone in the US, almost as good as anyone in the world in terms of how you've been able to approach not just these last couple of years, but even in the last like 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, I mean, it just luckily I've been able to race enough to where I'm in the seat constantly. It's all about seat time, and then the amount of laps I've done over the course of 10, 20 years is a lot. So you have that feeling to be able to just hop right back into it. Like a lot of people say, when you just get back into it, just a feeling thing. And yeah, so I've been able to always just stay on top of my game, and I would say more so when you get older, you got to more focus on your fitness more so than when you're 18. You can just really do whatever you want, man. You can go party the night before, wake up drunk, and just go drive it. You'll be fast, man. Now you kind of got to be more mature about it when you approach the racing. I think that's just kind of how you go as you age in motorsports.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess to follow that up as well, this year has been a little bit different as well. It seems like the races have been way longer as well this year. I see you get out of the go-kart after, I saw you after Stars dumping a bottle over your head, a water bottle, of course, over your head, and then as well at SCUSA. I mean, you guys are really kind of going through it this year. It seems like, AJ.
Yeah, something about the weather is just every Sunday at 3 o'clock it wants to be 95 degrees and humid. So it just if it was 50 degrees outside, there's no problem here. We'll go all day. It's just yeah, it gets tough. We all have to push our hardest to get through it.
Yeah. And I see Joe here in the green room asking if you have any specific fitness program in place to stay fit whenever you get back in the seat, or whenever you stay in the seat, I should say.
No, me and my girlfriend Jordan, we went for a run last night. Do some push-ups, just some random stuff. Nothing special. Just got to make sure you're moving and working out here and there.
Staying active.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna say I have one more for you, AJ, and I know that like we mentioned, you've had a lot of history, a lot of wins, a lot of successful moments. But if you were to look back on the karting career of AJ Myers so far, what's the one kind of moment, or just it could be a year, it could be a race, it could just be a special moment within the tent that you would say you look back on the most fondly?
I'd probably say KZ Vegas 2014 when I got fifth from 18th. It was like first KZ race ever. Purple the whole final. Most final, we like to say things a little biased, but
Yeah.
no, I mean it was a one misship from the guy ahead of me in a heat race from a way better race maybe, but that's the race.
Yeah. And as well, I mean, I would. Last year you were at the World Championships as well, and you actually got the Magic card into that main event. I know it was an up and down weekend all the way through, but that wasn't your first showing, was it? At the World Championships, you've had a couple before, I believe, at CRG as well in KZ2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that was the third attempt. The first one was in 2015 with PCR, my first time over in Europe. That one was in Le Mans. That one I got into an incident, I think in that final with Flore. I was around like 23rd, 24th place. We weren't nothing special that race.
Yeah.
I had actually never practiced on that track until Thursday or official practice. You send it. That was less than ideal. And then CRG one was I did that one in Lonato in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun with Garrison there. My engine had a problem in the last heat, kind of knocked me out of that final. Was disappointed. And then obviously we had this last year with Magic in Germany, and we got into it. We had really good race pace. It was just kind of a lack of understanding of why we were slow on the one lap pace. Whether it was me, whether it was the cart, we may never know.
How cool is that to bring the Magic over there and kind of take one to the Europeans a little bit and put it in the final?
It's super cool. And then they look at like what is this, man? Like what are you doing? But no, it's definitely cool, and you gotta take some pride in that. Taking it over there.
Yeah.
Was anybody looking at your go-kart trying to maybe take a bit of advice from what you guys are doing over there at Magic?
No, I don't think so. Those guys got their own 10 chassis. They got to go through in 3 practices, so they got their own work cut out for them.
Well, we've talked about your trek over to Europe multiple times. I mean, what differences have you noticed? I mean, you've been there 15, 19, and then last year in 23. So over the span of 8 years, you've been there 3 times. How do you see the sport of karting progressing here in the States compared to what you see over in Europe?
Actually, recently it's gotten so much better in the KZ level and the competitiveness of it all. I think the skill level's definitely risen, and we're definitely. I think we were lacking. We had a couple of years ago, 5-10 years ago, we really had no numbers and shifters. After the Honda days and the 175 came through, we just kind of were down on the counts. And I think you get to see the talent come up. I think now we're starting to see some more guys take that step and kind of show their talent this year, and some people coming over from all parts of the world, and it's great to see.
And I want to ask you, I mean, what sort of advice do you have for drivers growing up? Because I mean, you started pretty young. You've been around the block, I'd say. So for people getting into the sport or into the sport now who are still new to it all. What advice do you have for people that maybe want to make it professionally, whether it's in karting or beyond?
You just gotta be smart, and you gotta put yourself out there. I think you gotta put yourself into uncomfortable situations. Sell yourself a lot better than I ever did. You just gotta be confident and put yourself in that situation to meet those people. It's not about who you know now; it's about who you meet tomorrow. And yeah.
We touched on the night fight a little bit earlier on, but final question here, AJ, or maybe one more after. But Night fight coming up this weekend. You're the points leader by a decent margin. Where's your head at?
Number one, I'm gonna be looking out for those yellow flags in that final. That one cost me. I think at night though, that yellow flag's gonna be flashing very brightly. So luckily, I got that on my side. But all jokes aside, I'm feeling confident. Me and Talon have been going back and forth unofficially on that track record at GoPro with the new MGs. So Thursday night, we're looking to set the official track record, and hopefully I'm on that side. That's me. And then I think we're gonna get some rain racing, and so we're gonna get a little bit of everything, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
Awesome.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
rain
say,
racing. Go, Emory.
yeah, I was gonna say, AJ, have you ran a shifter race at night? Because I feel like you haven't run the last 2 night fights, and I'm curious to hear what your like shifter night racing experience is.
Vegas.
That's
Enough
true.
said, Liz.
That's true.
Vegas.
Yeah.
You just go
I guess
through
I guess that'd be the first.
don't ask me about
Yeah,
last year.
I guess. Yeah. No, but I guess like outside of Vegas and I guess other like temporary circuits, like do you notice any sort of differences in terms of like, I guess it's one thing to drive a single speed, slower speed and whatnot, but when it comes to shifter racing, how different is the approach when it takes long to get the tires up to temperature and when you're kind of fighting maybe the much lower track temps, especially at a place like Mooresville where it can go from 90 to 70 or 60 in like 2 hours?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely kind of fun. Everything just kind of comes at you that little bit more fast with the lights, and yeah, maybe you have to take yourself easy for a couple extra laps, maybe. But really, it's more so just like slipping and sliding that extra little bit. You just don't have that little bit of extra traction when you hit the gas. Got to be a little bit extra patience there early on. I think that's what you see with that cold tire, but it makes it so fun to drive. And I really hope it's not wet for all these night races. I want to get some good dry running in.
All right, AJ. I mean, we always give our guests here at the end of the interview the chance to kind of shout themselves out. You've already talked about you're going to night fight. We know that, but where can people find you on socials? And what's going up next for you besides night fight? What races are next for you, and maybe what's next for the Magic team as a whole?
Yeah, well, I guess socials just AJ Myers. Find me on that. But coming up next is this night fight. Then we have the USDPSK Championship. Got to bring home the single speed with Magic. We got that in Newcastle, and then it's just the big one in Vegas, I believe. And just got to end the year strong. Last year was perfect in Vegas until it wasn't. So just got to push through one extra day longer this time.
Perfect. Yeah, you actually mentioned the single speed championship real quick. I know you've alluded to it slightly. Can we expect an AJ X30 race next year?
Yeah, I think if I do single speed next year, I think it'll be X30. I think I'll move on past this last. You get it. It's fun when you're fast, man, but oh man, is it annoying when you're slow in KA? You just can't get out of your own way. And sometimes there's nothing you can do. So I think we give it a chance next year, maybe a couple races. We'll see what happens. That'd be even better.
Yeah. All right.
Nice.
That'll be cool. That'll be really cool to see AJ in the 125 stuff. All right, AJ, thank you so much for joining us. We did it at the start of the show. Round of applause again for AJ Myers.
Thank you, AJ.
Thank you for joining the
Applause
show,
to
AJ.
you guys. Applause to you guys. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. All right, well, that's AJ Myers, first of 3 guests tonight, the Magic Man. When we come back, we're gonna have Joe Janowski on the show. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
Colin, I need a new 219 chain. I need a 77 toothbrush sprocket. I need some more chain lube, and I need it probably as soon as like tomorrow. Dude, are you even listening? Like, we need this to run this weekend.
Want anything else?
What do you mean?
I already got it in the car on Acceleration Kart Racing's online store, bro. All orders over $200 get free shipping.
Oh, throw in a set of tires.
Done.
Everything you need, all in one place and shipped to your door for free on orders of $200 or more. Exclusions apply. Shop AKR.com.
All right, welcome back to Grid Talk Tuesday, episode number 26. We just had the Magic Man on the show. Next up, we're going to have, the Stars Man, we can call him maybe. Joe Janowski. Joe, first of all, thank you for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. I mean, it's not easy to follow up AJ Myers, so, I'll do my best.
You raced his dad back in the day. Who was quicker?
I did. I'm gonna, definitely Mike. Definitely.
What's that like? Does it give you any sense of pride or maybe a sense of age in terms to race his dad and then all of a sudden you have AJ in your series?
It's let's just go like it's yet another thing that makes me feel really old. But no, I used to race. So Mike was racing shifters at the same time I was back in the 90s and early 2000s. I'm not sure when Mike stopped. But yeah, I knew Mike back in the 90s, and then here his kids out, thumping everybody's head, and it was like, well, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty cool. It's neat to see.
Well, you talk about it a little bit, but what got you into the sport? I want to hear your background because I know it's a pretty long and extensive background. I want to hear from the beginning. Give me the Joe Janowski lore of how you got into the sport.
We don't have time for that, man. No, so my dad was a racing nut, right? So probably like a lot of people that got in the sport some way or another. My dad wanted to drive sprint cars so bad, and he did race like some midgets and did some minor, road race stuff. But man, he really wanted to race sprint cars. So they moved from Chicago down to Southern Indiana, which at the time and still is a pretty big sprint car hotbed, and they came across a glitch. The glitch was me, so I ended up being born, and that kind of put a kibosh on Dad's sprint car career. But what he did find through a random connection was karting. And so starting in, around 72 or 73, which sounds ancient, doesn't it? But, he started racing karts locally. And then, it's funny, like AJ was talking about one of his first memories with his dad. Mine was about the same. And, it's like being at kart races. I remember being 3 years old going like, that's when you couldn't start till you were 8. Like, there was no option. There was no kid karts or any of that stuff. So I had to wait till I was 8 years old. And I got my first go-kart for Christmas in 1980. And funny story, it was Tony Stewart's. So Tony Stewart and I grew up in the same town. And Tony was already racing karts. And so my dad was racing karts. And so Tony's dad, Nelson, helped my dad kind of get the kart put together for me for Christmas, which is pretty cool. So I wish I could find that go-kart. I have looked. I can't find it.
That'd be cool.
I have no idea where it went, but that'd be a neat one to get back. But so that's how I started. And then it was very different back then, but I ran locally. It's funny you brought up Whiteland. Whiteland was the first place that I cut my sprint racing teeth. And now I'm involved in it, which is kind of funny. And then it just kind of went, wasn't like a lot of national stuff back then. So when you look at like the 80s and 90s, it was the WK Manufacturers Cup was kind of the de facto national. And so did those. And, then once we kind of started SCUSA and then the Super Nats came along with that. And then national racing began to kind of occur. Kind of followed that all the way up through, and away you go. And throw in some trophy models in there, midgets, and some other stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. What inspired you? Would you say to follow in your dad's footsteps? I know, like you said, like everybody at some point probably had a parent figure that got them the sport or some sort of family member that got them into it. But what inspired you to follow in your dad's footsteps to kind of take over for the NKA and so on and so forth?
I'm a rabid motorsports person. I just think, honestly, I came out of the womb ready to go. And
with a steering wheel in hand?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cheeky, but like, I can't remember not being absolutely infatuated with racing. Like, I had, like everybody, like for Christmas, they knew just give me like Matchbox cars. And in my room when I was a little kid, my mom got me this circular rug, right? And I would be racing the cars around the rug when I was like 2 or 3 years old. I've always had just this and I like just about every, I'm not a huge drag racing guy, but outside of that, if you turn left and right, I watch it. Like, I'm a fan of all kinds of racing, and I still am. And even though I don't get in the seat too much anymore, I've always just been, it's just part of, it's really just part of who I am, basically.
so we get to NKA. You get, you're part of SCUSA for quite a while. You step away. You get SCUSA Great Lakes going back in 2019, and from there that transitions pretty quickly into what we know now as Stars. How did that come about? What made you get back into? There was a bit of a hiatus, I'd say, in the mid 2000s. You got back into the karting scene again. What brought you back to karting, and then decide to make a series?
Well, there's some backstory to it. So if you go back to like the mid 90s, my family started SCUSA. My dad had this kind of crazy idea. Really, to start with SCUSA, his vision was a lot more like World of Outlaws. So what he wanted was like 15 shifter drivers going into different events, right? And that's kind of how it started. That's what we did. And it just kind of grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And so because I was working in the NKA, so I started working. He started that in 1985, 1986, right in there. And I graduated from Purdue in 95. And because, really, didn't have anything else to do, I started working in the family business. But I'd actually been working in it before that too. And so we kind of were one of those families, we would just talk about this stuff all the time. And so my dad was kind of like sort of guiding everything, but I ended up doing a lot of the creative stuff with SCUSA. And so I kind of designed the events, and I would kind of be like, I'd be out there racing and thinking, man, it'd be really cool if we did X, Y, or Z. By the way, that's your first, if we're doing a cool shit counter, that's your first cool.
We'll update it.
So it would be like, I was always frustrated, like when I would go to like WK races, right? You'd win, WK race, then you'd sit around for 6 hours, and then you'd take a picture, in front of a banner or something like that. So we started doing podiums like right after the race, which SCUSA still does at the Supernats. That's one example of just a lot of things that we were able to sort of kind of change the dynamic, and everybody does all this stuff now. So like those like you guys and probably a lot of people watching this don't know how big of an effect that had on the sport, right? So, the sport before SCUSA came along and the sport after SCUSA came along, they look very different. There was a lot more of a show that SCUSA brought in. And so I was obviously heavily involved in a lot of stuff, and SCUSA grew, and another guy named Jim Murley came in, and became kind of a big thing. And by the 2000s, early 2000s, for the most part, I was out. I was still racing, and Jim was kind of running the show, and we had to take it back at the end of 2003, kind of like lock, stock, and barrel. And so I stopped driving and ran SCUSA for a couple of years, and honestly, it just really kind of burned me out. And then somebody like threw me into a stock car, which was a ridiculous decision on their part, but kind of had fun on that because it was kind of fun to suck at something, and I sucked. So I really enjoyed kind of getting to a reasonably high level and that stuff. But I was always obviously involved in the karting stuff, just not publicly. I wasn't out publicly very much, but obviously NK is still kicking along and doing what it does. And in 2016, so my dad passed away in 2016, which also coincided with the I'm not sure what anniversary it was for the Supernats that year in 2016, probably 20 maybe, been 20 years.
Yeah.
And so and that was first year, so Tom was doing he was basically inducting my dad as the first person into the SCUSA Hall of Fame, right? So I thought, hey, it'd be kind of cool to race it. So I go out there and I didn't really do any practicing, just kind of like hopped in and went and had a blast. But really what I noticed was that, the driving standards sucked. I walked around the pits. I mean, there were bent frames and, people getting carted off. And, as the insurance guy, it was kind of freaky, right? Mm-hmm. So I ended up talking to Tom and Stan and going like, hey, I know that there's a race director position maybe coming up, and I might be interested to get back involved in that. So, so I got back involved in it, and I think it reignited. So I'm very slowly getting back to the question you're asking.
Yeah.
So that kind of reignited that thing that I have that I've always enjoyed about creating events and creating something that I, as a racer, would want to go to, which I think a lot of people don't do, right? So they think of it from their perspective. But I really, honestly, everything that we do boils down to, if as a racer it wouldn't work very well, then I don't want to do it. But anyway, so that kind of boiled into, man, gave me the kind of the promoter's itch. And so that's where that kind of started with the Great Lakes deal in 2019. And then 2020 was just kind of that moment. I think like a lot of people, man, during COVID, you're sitting there, you don't know what's like, I can't speak for anybody else, right? But, from my perspective, we're all just sitting around doing nothing. So, you're not generating revenue. And it was kind of this interesting time period for me of just kind of sitting there sort of reflecting on, what do I want to do? And how do I want to, kind of take on, like, if we were able to come out of this thing, alive, like, what does that look like? And I really realized that, in all deference to Tom and the Scoos operation, because I'm a huge fan, always will be a big fan of Scoos as a company, right? I really wanted to kind of chart my own path. And I wanted to create a much deeper tie-in between what we're doing nationally, or what I'm doing in terms of race production and promotion and safety and whatever else it is, and being able to parlay that off to, just regular tracks in the NKA system. And so that was really the impetus of sort of like charting your own course, right? So we started doing that, and here we sit today.
Yeah.
Is that how you've always have you always been that guy that looks at things from a different angle? Because I feel like we see so many people, maybe just think of one solution and that's it. But you seem like you talk about you were on the creative side, back in the early 2000s, and now with Stars, I think you guys have a pretty different approach to how a series should be run, and it's worked out for you guys. Have you always been that guy that look at things from maybe a different angle?
In every way possible. I don't know how much of it's intentional, right? I think I just tend to, and I think I always have, I see things differently than a lot of people do. And maybe it's not even seeing differently. I just, I expose myself to a lot of things, a lot of different kinds of racing, a lot of different kinds of businesses, a lot of different kinds of things and activities. And I annoy the holy bejesus out of my wife because, I'm bringing up all these random documentaries I watch on all this kind of stupid crap. But it's really kind of fun when you can bring in these little pieces and parts that I've pulled out of the dirt racing days that I did, in the stock cars, and implement some things I learned there, or, whatever it is. So yeah, I think it just gives me kind of just a natural, unique perspective. And that kind of is generally guiding. And then I think that's attracted, and I think the real secret sauce is, I think that sort of idiocy that I bring at times has attracted a really good group of people that work with us. And so it's really not about me. It's really about, it's kind of funny because I know a lot of racers will sit around, like, because we used to do it too, right? Where you're sitting around and you're at a race weekend and everybody's drinking and you start going like, wouldn't it be cool if, right? Like, well, we actually do that. And I keep telling everybody, like, I get my best ideas at about a pint and a half in.
Yeah.
And so there's probably more than one. I know naming events, which was not my idea. That was a Christian Marsh idea. But naming events, I'm sure that, we were sitting around drinking or doing something, right? And so it's just that really fun thing of like, yeah, so not only would it be cool if, but I think that's number 3 on the cool counter. Not only would it be cool if we did it, but we can actually do it, right? And we like it.
Yeah.
So, we like doing stuff like that. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Well, what's the coolest idea you guys have thought of on the spot? Maybe a drink or two in.
I don't know, because there's so many, man. Probably, Night Fight came along in that same discussion, right?
Yeah.
So for me,
yeah, the idea of making it a night race, you mean?
Yeah, well, the name too, right? Was just like, it's just like, it's like the idea of like, I've always wanted to do a night race, and like, why don't we do night races on a big scale? And like, Eric does one. I mean, Eric did one a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think, I really didn't tune in a whole lot because I was kind of busy, but, I know he runs a portion at night, but I'm like, what if we try to run the whole thing, like the main parts of it at night, like give her, because I grew up racing at night. And there's just probably like one of my favorite things is like that 6, 7, 8 o'clock time period, right, where the sun is setting,
Yeah.
but the lights are on. And for me, that's like heaven, right, at a racetrack. I just love that time period. People are heading to the grid, right? Clear shield, clear visors are coming out. And there's just such a different dynamic when you race at night. And you touched on it. I don't know if it was Kaleb. I think it was Kaleb. Maybe it was Emory. But you guys kind of asked AJ about what that's like.
Yeah, Emory.
And it's just so much cooler at night. I mean, it is so much cooler at night because your brake zones, like you can't see, those little marks you see on the racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, here at Trackhouse, I mean, the place is so well lit. This really doesn't apply, but a lot of places, whatever marks you were using on the track during the day, those don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And, so it just creates a different dynamic. Everything's like flipping by, it seems a lot faster and quicker. So it's really cool. And so, so that would probably be like doing a night race, and then coming up with the name Night Fight was probably one of, there's probably 1,000 I'm not thinking of at the moment.
It's so funny. That reminds me of, it's like the joke when, a couple of buddies get together and it's like, let's start a podcast, and they don't know what they're going to talk about.
Yeah. No,
But
we used to do that. Like Christian Marsh, I mean, he used to come over often, and originally I brought Christian in just to handle social media, for the stuff. But he would come over, and man, we'd just sit in my house, and other racers would come over, and we'd be sitting around on my back porch drinking beer and coming up with stupid ideas, and we kept some of them, so I mean, it's just it's just been so much fun, to kind of come out and do this. And it gets terrifying at times, right? Because, when you got 60 guys coming to a race, it's like, yeah, we'll do this crazy thing. And I mean, there's 60 guys showing up, right? So then you get to like 200, and then you get to like 250 or close to 300. And you're like, oh, Jesus, maybe we can't like do everything we want to do all the time. Like, I'm not sure who came up. I know it was Christian that came up with, bringing donuts to the track on Sundays.
I love it.
But that would be one of the that would be just an idea we probably all had sitting around. Like, wouldn't it be funny? Because we had that whole donuts are for winners thing. And they're like, well, I don't have donuts at the track, right? And by the way, if there's anybody out there from Dunkin' Donuts, you guys are really screwing up a great opportunity here, right? So, join in on this thing. But, they're bringing donuts out this weekend too. But I'm not sure when. So be ready for free donuts. But
Nice. Yeah.
I love it. Oh, man. I got to say, before I hand it over to the boys, do you think, you touched on it a little bit, but I think part of the reason why you have such a pretty great community behind you, I mean, you log in the Discord, and there's this constant chatter going on. Christian's in it, you're in it, and everybody that's been a part of a Stars race or even wants to be a part of it is in that. Do you think it's because you're so relatable? I mean, on the show right now, you're just giving us great content to talk about. It's got to be because you're so relatable, right?
I don't know if I'm relatable or not. I think what it boils down to
down
is
to earth.
I don't take myself very seriously. And if you hang out with me, and I mean, there's a lot of people out there probably know who I am, but don't really know me. I really don't take myself very seriously. And, I take what I do very seriously, but I don't take myself very seriously. So, I'm a dude that got to, by this weird stroke of luck, got to play with go-karts his whole professional life, right? And so you can't take that very seriously. It's I'll tell you, the funny thing is, like, when you go to like a party and then somebody walks up to me and goes, and I'm like, oh, well, what do you do? And they're like, I'm an accountant, I'm an attorney, I'm a whatever, right? And they're like, oh, well, what do you do, Joe? And I have no idea what to tell them, right? None. My wife, when we first met, this is my second marriage, and she didn't know what I did probably for about a year and a half. I think her friends were like, is he really probably in jail or like a drug dealer or something weird? You just can't tell us what he does, but I've just been able to develop this really probably very unique skill set, right? So working in the NKA, which, does a lot for facilities, but a lot of it's behind the scenes, and so it's going to be, doing insurance for tracks and trying to, guide the safety of a sport, through various things. And so there's a very serious side to what we do. And like, dealing with litigation and trying to, up the game for the sport, and then like really stars is kind of, ends up being something where, you get to go out and have a lot of fun, and then a couple of years ago, I think probably one of the coolest innovations that we've done, although it's being adopted quite a bit, probably not as much as I would like to see, are the lights on the track. And I know, AJ's a little bitter from that one from MCC. Apparently, the good part that's going to come out of that, for those of you that don't know, AJ got himself a passing under the yellow and he didn't see the light. And I think that, those were, so the lights at MCC we didn't place. And so I have a very specific way I do it. And this isn't bagging on Sean by any means. It's kind of like, it just was one of those things where I think, like, for our races, I'm going to make sure I place the lights. I'm the guy that actually goes out there and places all the lights. And I want them to be in a very specific spot. And it was different than probably what it was. So, but outside of, that kind of stuff, it's been, from a safety perspective, there's just so much better, right? So not only one, I get cool ass blinky lights, but two, it's safer, right? And better and more consistent. And so those are things that can transfer, over to the sport, right? So then we came up with, I started using Alpha last year, which was this really cool registration / it's actually like an ecosystem. It does all the stuff, right? And I found it in the UK randomly, and then kind of enveloped it, began representing it in the United States, and that thing's taken off like crazy too.
Yeah.
All of these things are just like super awesome, fun things that when I wake up every day, and it's not easy, by the way. There's a lot of crap that goes into producing a go-kart race, but or running a software deal, or getting lights in, or dealing with attorneys and other kind of stuff with NKA. But and then just because I didn't seem busy enough, I also got involved in Whiteland this year, and what a cool facility that is, and just give some people some perspective out there. Like, so Whiteland, and I know there's a couple other tracks out there that kind of think they can buy on this. I'm going to die on the hill that says Whiteland is the oldest kart track in the United States, and has been continually operating since 1958. So, like, just think about how much karting has gone on at that one racetrack since 1958. And, like, big names have gone through there, right? So, a lot of IndyCar guys cut a lot of laps at Whiteland back in the day. Like, I raced there, like, when I was a junior. I remember Michael Andretti racing out there. Tony Stewart raced there. Like, a bunch of other people raced there. So just a really neat facility. And so it was really close to, and I don't remember the story exactly, but it was pretty much run to the ground, right? So, like, it just been kind of, nobody was really paying attention to it. And Andy O'Gara and Sarah O'Gara, formerly Sarah, everybody probably knows her better, publicly as Sarah Fisher. They obviously were like maybe doing drugs or something, because they thought it'd be a great idea to go in and save Whiteland. So they did, right? So this was the thing where they're sitting around drinking and going, wouldn't it be great if we saved Whiteland? And they did. But, so it's like, oh, we should start a bar. We should buy go-kart. And so they've put a lot into it. They've turned this facility into this gorgeous, really beautiful place. And so, they just need some help with I think on the competition side, and just kind of like helping kind of guide it away. And I tell you what, man, the racing at that track is tough. It is hard as nails. Like, when you were reading off some of the winners, some of those are, kids that run nationally. It's they get good entries, and it's a good facility. And I've been so, I hate to say, I don't want to say the word blessed, because that sounds so cliched, but I was really lucky to have that opportunity that Sarah, Andy and Sarah were obviously must have been smoking drugs again, because they called me to come in and help do it. But it's been a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. And boy, it's so different. Like, when your mindset's like running a national event, right? So, like, you can kind of be like, okay, it's got to be A, B, C, and D, because that's how nationals are run. And then I go into, to like a local, situation, which is just a way different environment, man. But we've done a lot of cool shit there too. Like we kind of innovated this whole new schedule that we do down there, which is like a morning and an afternoon program, which wasn't so much an innovation. I kind of stole it from Trackhouse, but at least the idea. But there's been a bunch of other stuff too, and it's just really been a lot of fun. But man, this year's been a lot of work. But it's kind of blew my mind. This year with stars has just been really impressive. Just kind of like kind of took me by surprise a little bit. So it's been a bit of a blast this year.
Mm-hmm.
I need a break though. Need a break.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess I want to go into stars just a little bit, because I think from the start of that series, you guys, I guess, envisioned it to be somewhat of a regional series going around the Midwest and racing a little bit in the Midwest. And you guys were obviously getting close to the 200 mark in the first couple of years and then surpassed it. And then this year you guys were, knocking on the door to the 300 mark at the first round at the Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Yeah.
And, how's the growth of the series been over the years? And did you envision it to get this big today?
Honestly, I don't really know how to answer it, because I just really wanted to put on what I thought would be some really cool races, and that's where it really started. So like, I didn't really say like, I want a regional or I want a national. I was really just kind of like, I wanted a race that I wanted to be a part of, as a racer. So, so that for me was probably the impetus of all of it. Right. So I think, very early on, people were like, were you a regional or, you try to be a national? Yeah. And it was like, well, look, do you have a good time when you come here? Is it good racing? I wanted people to enjoy it and all that kind of fun stuff. And, I asked my kid, right, Mason, who does all of our scoring. So he's been involved in this program since the very get-go. And if you ask him, he's like, my dad only knows one way to do it. Right. Which is probably true. I really kind of only know one way to produce an event. And that's kind of what you get. And I think that begins to attract, I think we provide a really high level event at a good price point. Right. So we're giving a lot of good stuff, at a price point that people, it's a little bit easier for a lot more people to afford it.
Yeah, and to follow up on that as well, you talk about the price point. I feel like your series as well is one of the very few that we still see a lot of privateers and a lot of people pitting out of the back of their truck or with a 10x10 tent as well in many of the series. So what's that also kind of been like to make it affordable? And I feel like as well, you guys always remind the people of how much of a family and how much of a fun environment Stars is meant to be.
Well, it's a lot of the culture, and I would say probably the culture maybe starts a little bit with me, but I mean, Christian is Morris has really been the person that has been able to articulate the culture super well. And I think everybody, and here's the funny part, I think everybody really enjoys coming here because we all kind of adopt it, right? From the staff to most of the racers. I mean, not all of them, right? But a very good chunk, and it's strange. How that culture has kind of dripped its way through. And it's, look, here's how I look at it. And maybe some, teams may not like me saying this, but, and I'm sure Christian, if he's watching this right now, is going, oh, Jesus, what is he going to say? But the reality of it is, man, you can win a national race out of the back of a pickup truck. And I don't think that there should ever be a barrier for someone to attempt to do it. I've done it. I've shown up at races in the back of a pickup truck. And so I feel it's important, right? Anybody is welcome to come run a Stars race. And so I don't want to get into, in any kind of situation where it kind of feels like we're trying to push those people out or charge too much or kind of choke them out while we can, right? It's really just about providing a really good product and creating a lot of value. I want people to go home. I want them to feel like they raced a big, badass event.
Yeah.
And however, and I've always had, however you want to categorize that for yourself. I think there were some people like earlier were like, I went and ran a national, then AJ Myers was probably like, well, I ran a regional this weekend. Right. And so, and that's the reality, but it was whatever it was to those people. And that's kind of what's pretty cool about it.
Yeah, and I guess lastly here to finish up, I guess my string of questions, but you guys are also talking about new dates for next year and new places to go out. I know a lot of people have Been very busy in the Discord. People have said, I think these boys are in favor of Norway. I'm in favor of something more south down here in Texas near NOLA. But I guess what's that been like, to start to look outside of the Midwest, down south or over west or wherever, you guys may expand to?
That is probably like, if there's something that keeps me up at night, Kaleb, like that's what it is. Right.
I apologize for reminding you or bringing back some
Like,
nightmares.
thanks, man. I'm going to get a craptastic night's sleep now. It's like, oh God, Caleb's like, I don't know, man. Like, what's really weird is like, the parallels between, because, I've been really lucky. I've lived through this kind of growth curve twice. And so, when SCUSA, and like you guys weren't around, right, when SCUSA took its big growth curve, but when it hit 97, and I want to say, so 97 was the first year we did the Super Nationals. And before it was the Super Nationals, there was this other guy that promoted it. And literally, like, I kid you not, the guy disappeared. Like, nobody's ever heard from the guy after, like, I think the 1996 year. Right. So his name was Wes Gibbs. If anybody knows where Wes Gibbs went, let me know, because it's like he promoted it, I raced it, and then poof, he was gone. And actually it was in Phoenix. So we moved. So we basically, like, this cool race that was happening in November wasn't going to happen. And it just so happened there was a brand new track that was built in Vegas, which isn't there anymore. We affectionately called it the Rock Pile. And I can't remember what its real name was. A guy named Spencer Apple built it. And so anyway, we decided, we weren't even SCUSA back then. We were Superkarts USA back then. And it was, so we're like, let's put on the Super Nats. And it was just literally, the name came from, I can tell you, because I was sitting in the room, the Super Nationals came from Superkarts and then Nationals. I mean, that was it. It was Super Nationals. And so after that, then basically there were a bunch of regions around the United States that were doing a lot of shifter kart racing at the time. And so then, like, all of a sudden, even though my dad didn't want this to happen at all, it all kind of aggregated underneath Superkarts USA, which then very quickly became SCUSA, right? Because everybody starts hacking away and shortening names, right? So, so that's what it became. And so I got to live through that. I got to live through, like, where the Pro Moto became the default kind of first really big national program in the United States. And so when I got involved, when we started doing this, I'll tell you what's interesting is good ideas take off quickly, and you don't really usually have to push them too hard, right? I mean, if you got to really be working hard at pushing something, it's probably not a great idea. And so we did Stars, and it just seemed to, like, it feels like it had that same trajectory. And so I've gotten to kind of ride that wave twice. So to answer your question, Kaleb, I don't know. Back in the SCUSA days and then now today, we're presented with a whole lot of opportunities. I mean, like, the phone rings, people are like, hey, we'd love to get you, we'd love to have a Stars race in whatever area. Or like, when is Stars coming to the West Coast? Or when is Stars coming to Florida? And the way that I look at it probably is, we've always had, probably the main thing that we've always really focused on is the people that come race with us. And so that's first and foremost, right? Are the people that come and support the program and what is important to them from a where we go standpoint or what we're going to do standpoint. And so that's really what we kind of have to look at. And then second is, what impact are we making on the sport? And if we're going to look at, like, going and spread into some area, I feel like we need to do good, right? We need to come in and fill a void that maybe isn't there. And so I want to be very, very careful about how we do that, because you don't want to come in and upset certain areas that have good dynamics that are going on, where the sport is healthy, where, it'd be good for us to go in there, but it may not be good for the area to go in there. So, next year we're kind of staying, reasonably within the sort of the footprint of where we are. But we're, I'm already looking at 26 now, 26 and 27. There's some new facilities that are coming online in the next couple of years that are pushing further south, that I think may help really kind of bridge some of that gap and be really great places to go, really great party towns, which I always like, even though I end up I end up staying in my rig at the racetrack. It's good to say like, hey, we can go to a party town. So
Yeah.
those things. It's funny you brought up Norway, because that whole deal on Discord, and I don't know how many people on here happen to be on the Stars Discord. We don't restrict it. Y'all can get in there and look at what's
We're
going
in.
on. And
I commented.
the comments like about like where to go next year really kind of blew me away.
Mhm.
You know, it was like there's a lot of interest and a lot of people really supporting my programs. And Norway got on the radar again. So I kind of going back because I'm old, right? But Norway is probably my favorite layout of any
It's
track
so
in the United
cool.
States. Not to diss on any other awesome racetrack that's out there, but for me personally, I loved racing Norway more than I loved anywhere. I love to jam like y'all. It's got this Monza
Bowl corner.
bank
So
Yeah.
good.
monster,
It's
right? And I would jam that sucker in there and go all the way up to the edge and then diamond that thing off and come back. And I'm telling you, that's like,
Dude, the
I've got
ski
a-
jump is the coolest part.
it's the ski jump. So I have a picture that was taken of me there. I don't remember what year, probably 01 or 02. And I'm coming over the ski jump and I'm all four off, right?
Yeah.
And it's my favorite picture that was ever taken me in anything I've ever driven. A guy named
Mine
Jeff
too.
Deskins, actually. And the ski jump is awesome. The bowl is awesome. A friend of mine and
You know
I
my
actually...
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Alex.
I was gonna say my favorite part of the whole racetrack is when the kid carts go there and they have to go through the tunnel in the pit lane.
I was gonna say,
Under the ski
can we get like a supplemental kid kart race if Stars goes to Norway so we can see
No,
kids
one
go through
race.
the tunnel?
I
One
tell you
race.
what, I
It's
would love,
Thursday night.
Untested.
I'd love to have the kid carts, but the parents have to stay home.
Agreed.
Just-
Agreed. Agreed. Goodness
it-
gracious, Joe.
the-
Thank you for this today. Thank
The
you so
parents
much
are
for saying this.
challenging all of you guys who are kid cart parents. You need to breathe, right?
You have no idea. We're laughing right now because we had this argument earlier today in our kart chaser crew group chat, and Joe, thank you so much for saying this.
Guys, I'll go there every day of the
I'm
week
crying.
because you know kid carts are great. I love them as a training tool, but we really need to probably be spending more time training the parents than we do training the kids. It's challenging, right? They're new to the environment. So here's the PC calm everybody down after the kid cart comment. It's challenging for them. This is a new environment for both the kid and themselves, right? And they're just as jacked up as the kids are about all this kind of stuff. And they really want the kids to perform, and they're really working really hard on this stuff. And that comes out. It's passion, right? It's funny. You can kind of watch LA. They start way up here as kid cart parents, and then they become mini micro parents, right? They're mellowing. They're not kid cart level parent yet, but they're still kind of amped up. And by the time they get to later in the junior and early in the senior stuff, they've gone through it all now, right? You know, they've seen it and they're conditioned, you know. But anyway, so you know, Norway got on the radar, and a buddy of mine and I were actually looked at buying it a couple of years ago, and it obviously didn't work. But man, I was really thrilled to see, you know, the repaving. And it's under new ownership. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not. I don't know. I think they publicly announced it.
I think it was common
They
knowledge.
just publicly announced
Okay,
it.
yeah, so it's common good. So anyway, you know, I really want Norway's definitely like something I'm looking at. I think the only challenge there is you know, these events, especially if you like have maybe like a Norway coming back, you know, and so like there could be really a huge group of people that want to go there, and I'm almost worried, right, that we kind of overrun the facility, and you know, because these things are like, you know, when you go to any national event is just difficult on the facility to run. It's just a lot going on. There's a lot of people, and you always have people parking in the wrong spot, doing the wrong things, and over here the infrastructure has to be there, and so that's kind of why you tend to see national programs sort of head to the same places, because the infrastructures are like, for example, like Charlotte Motor Speedway was amazing to work with. the racing actually ended up being really good too at that race. But like just from a facility standpoint, I mean, they have United Rentals on site. So like if you need another 60 feet of fence, they have it, right? So like from a race production standpoint, those are the things that freak you out. It's like getting the right amount of fence, getting this in, getting that in, getting porta potties in, and they have all the stuff. Like so, and they have space. So parking is usually kind of like the big challenge you have when you're looking at where to go, right? So and then can the facility handle it? But I'm so happy to see Norway. With new ownership, with new pavement, I think that place could be monstrous. So I think they're going to have to try and stay on the horse over the next couple of years because I mean it's going to be trying to buck them because it's going to be pretty active up there. You got Quaker City that's about to go in, which is kind of up near Cleveland, sort of. You got Music City going in near Nashville, Tennessee. There's a couple others that I don't think are at announcement stage. So I tend to know like what's going on because I'm usually like one of the first phone calls. Like, hey, we're going to need some insurance on this thing and some rules.
Yeah.
And we need to pick your brain on stuff. And so there's some pretty neat tracks coming out too. So that was a long answer to your question, Kaleb.
No, it was. I mean, that's I guess exactly what we want out of answers to questions like that because we want to pick your brain as well. Hearing what you have to say about all that stuff, but. Yeah, it looks like you guys have some exciting stuff coming up, and I think you might as well just go ahead and announce Norway for next year if of how highly you talked about it just now. So,
well, the hard part is,
I'll be excited what Christian can cook up. Go ahead,
dude. This is hard, right?
Yeah.
For those of you out there that are kind of wonder like what it is that we actually do during the week. There's a lot of debate internally about where to go. Like for me, Newcastle's kind of a no-brainer. It's a facility that I've been involved with personally since it was built. It's my hometown, right? It can, they do such a fantastic job out there of managing large scale events that come in. So it has no equal in the sport in that sense, right? So like that one's for me is kind of like an almost every year should be on the schedule kind of thing. And this race I hope really becomes kind of night fight for me is a race that's about quality, not quantity. So I'm trying something with it being kind of like the finale instead of being kind of like an opener or a mid-year kind of thing. I'm still trying to find the right mix for it. I know a lot of kids can't come down for this particular race, which is a bummer because of school and stuff like that. So we see a little bit of a drop there, but I really think I really hope long term becomes a marquee. So then you have all of these great racetracks with people that I have good relationships with, but we got to move around. And how do you do that? So that's one of the challenges of doing something like this. So we take a lot goes into trying to figure out where we're going to go each year.
Yeah, we can only imagine.
That looks like Susan just changed the date. So now I got to go back and like look at my thing. And,
yeah.
Like, do we need to move something? But anyway, yeah.
Busy work.
Oh, man. So, Joe, I mean, I kind of want to go back all the way to talking about sort of the relationship that you had at the start of the series and kind of having each person that shows up for the series kind of thinking of it as maybe something different, like an AJ Myers looking at more of a regional. For some guys, it's the biggest race they go to. And then you kind of go a couple years down the line, and you guys had a few difficult decisions to make with regards to the classes that you ended up running. 206 kind of was not necessarily a key staple, but it was certainly like a good part of the rotation in the early years. I know you had kind of a lot of the more sort of regional drivers, a lot more of the kind of grassroots, lower budget drivers that ran that class. And then conversely, you guys were kind of the first, I would say, of the main national series to commit to the OKN package. And so I guess talk to me about the decision that went behind sort of embracing the OKN and unfortunately kind of bringing 206 to the wayside. And how do you think that decision has panned out over the last 2 years since moving to the OKN stuff and now OKNJ this year?
Yeah, well, let's talk OKN first. I'd been hunting for something different, right? So like, when I look at like, the SCUSA program or the USPKS program, which are great programs, and they were doing the X30 stuff and it was there, and it would have been super easy for me to just be like, yeah, I'll just run X30s and we'll just do the same thing as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But I've driven direct drive, and I used to pay a lot of attention to direct drive stuff, even though I was historically a shifter guy. They're badass, and I was really close. Like I really was like looking at the OK, right? And really, what was kind of holding me back was the idea of the fact that it's just could be terminally expensive, right? And I don't have personal experience with it, right? But it's a very expensive. It could be a very expensive class, and I was really kind of concerned about that. And I was concerned, like, how would that engine, run here? Is it maybe a little bit too much? Because our tracks are different than Europe, right? So where we run, this is very similar to it. Probably Charlotte's pretty similar, except it's a little wide. But there's not very many tracks that really kind of fit the CIK thing. So like, okay, so how would it function? How would it work here? And then, they dropped the. Actually, what's really funny, here's a funny story. I learned about the OKN on a Kart Chaser podcast. And I can't remember who was on it. And he was talking about the OKN. I'm like, OKN? What's this? And so I start calling, getting some information on it. And obviously I was living under a rock, right? And I was like, ooh, this might be that thing, where it's like, it's pretty close. It's not a full OK package, but it would be really cool. And I just like, dude, direct drive racing is just cool. It just is. And so that kind of, for me, kind of fit what I wanted to have as part of the program. Unfortunately, something has to go when you do that. I mean, there's X amount of time in a day. And so I want to make sure everybody's got value. What I saw with the main thing with the 206 was it didn't travel well. And so we got some guys that were core, but what we found was like most of it would be some local guys coming in and running the 206 program.
Correct. Yeah.
And not only that, but to be fair, and I kind of did it initially like, this would be really cool for 206 guys. Well, 206 guys have a great program. I mean, Greg's program with CKNA is monstrous. So they have a great program. And I really kind of felt like it was almost better to support him by making sure that, that those guys are really getting their kudos in a place that is really celebrating what it is that they're doing. Again, going back to, I don't want to hurt the sport in any way. So I feel like if the top guys should be at CKNA, and that was before. No, Greg is part of the NKA program now, but that was before that. I just felt like that was probably the appropriate thing to do, and I think there's still some guys that give us slack every now and again on some of the social stuff, like bring back 206. And I think 206 is awesome. 206. You can basically single-handedly give it credit for saving the sport of sprint karting. And, so it carries the weight of the sport on its back, 100%. But it's got a great place for that to go. So really it was a hard decision, but kind of an easy decision, because I really saw, like, I think this OKN thing is going to be absolutely killer. And so a little bit of teething here and there, but it's exactly what I want the class to be. I don't want it to be a 50 entry class. I want it to be just like kind of like Pro Stars. I want it to be 15 to 25 or 30, whatever it is. Really badass people, or people who are about to be badass, or people who want to be badass. And if we can get that done, those are shows. Those are the cream of the crop. That's the best that we have at this sport. And so it's really a showcase. And that's, I'm glad you guys, by the way, I'm really glad you guys like the qualifying on Thursday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Because I'm still the guy, by the way, that sits down and I literally map out the schedules for each race. And I sit there and I look at it, and I usually screw it up at least once. Nobody's told me I've screwed this one up yet, but I'm sure it'll come. But I was like, dude, it would be so cool, like, to do like the whole, because I was trying to think about how we could format this different, and I was like, dude, that'd be so cool to like run, like at the end of the day on Thursday night, to like run like qualifying, like letting that whole day build up, and then you know, because I'd want to do that, like as a racer, right?
Yeah.
So like that's the essence of kind of what I do.
Yeah, and you know, I know we talked about the schedule as well, and Kaleb mentioned the different places you guys think about, and you mentioned a lot of the things that keep you up at night. But you know, I kind of want to look beyond the scheduling stuff and sort of more towards the future as well. And you know, you guys have had the growth that's kind of been consistent. It's been really taking off in various different aspects. But as you look to 2025, 2026, and I'll even throw in 2027 as well, the next 3 years, I mean, what about your series keeps you up at night? You know, like what beyond just the locations, what else do you think is out there that you guys either need to make sure you like maximize or kind of have to kind of figure out, so to speak? Because on the basis, I mean, the current growth looks amazing, but I mean, I know you guys have been creative. And I want to know kind of where your kind of next thoughts are.
Well, like I think if you sit down with anybody that has like any kind of creative thing that they do, I think your biggest fear is that you run out of ideas, or that you get complacent, right? So you know, like one rule we have in Stars: if I ever hear anybody ever say because that's how we've always done it, we rip that apart. I'm probably, you know, as creative as we are on the front side, I think what people don't see either is I am fanatical about how we operate, right? And everything that we do. And I love it when things break because, you know, we can fix it, we can make it better. And so it's this internally, we have a culture of just this constant improvement. So what I'm really worried about is like, so what keeps me up at night is like, I don't have any more good ideas. Like I'm 3 pints in and I'm just dead. There's just nothing, you know? And so that probably keeps me up at night. You know, but probably the challenge of just knowing that you don't know what's going to happen in 3 years, Emory. Like, you know, there's no crystal ball. Like, you know, you had COVID that came in, right? And so, you know, if you talk to a lot of guys in 2019, they probably had a very clear feel for what was happening. And, you know, 2020, that went out the window. You know, now we're starting this all over again, right? So you don't know. I really do try to take these things 1 year at a time with an idea of some things I'm looking at maybe down the road. But I think those are always going to be guided with, are we doing good? You know, is this something that's a positive thing that we can do and contribute? But that's what keeps me up at night. It's probably like waking up one day going, that's it. I have no more ideas.
Yeah.
I got you. That definitely tracks out. And I guess one more thing on my end, kind of going back to the NKA stuff, how difficult is it? And just talk to me about some of the kind of things that go on behind the scenes with track insurance and a lot of the kind of stuff that you guys have to do on the day-to-day basis. Because I feel like out of all the things that we'll talk about on this podcast, whether it be series, whether it be drivers, different classes, different schedules, team owners, whatever, we really don't talk about the back end of insurance work and kind of track maintenance and some of that. So what would be your like?
It's because it's boring as hell, Emory.
No, but what's the
nobody wants to talk about fence heights and
but see, like, yeah, make it fun for us for a minute or so.
Okay, well, you can't. Unfortunately, it's just a droll topic, right? But probably what I work probably more than anything. I mean, if you really want to know what really keeps me up at night, you know, not the Stars stuff, but what really keeps me up at night is, you know, the fact our sport is really very much under attack. And a lot of people, you just don't see it, right? I mean, we don't publish this stuff, but it's a merciless attack in litigation in today's world. Most of these tracks, if you're a sprint track, you're probably doing rental carts, you know, but just in general, how easy it is for people to bring a lawsuit against a karting track is phenomenal. And so we have a couple hundred facilities that are operating under the NKA in any given weekend, and trying to get all of them to take safety. The hard part is you can't make racing safe. You know what I mean? You can do whatever you can. I mean, you can try as hard as you want to, The last probably, big thing that came out was, kind of when I went a little radical a couple of years ago with weights coming off of go-karts.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because a kid took a weight to the face. And only to find out, what's interesting is I'm trying to, work harder on building a community of information, getting out to tracks, because we don't know, once I made that rule change and, thankfully other organizations adopted it. Now I'm beginning to really see it percolate down through the sport. Was anecdotally how many reports came back of weights coming off of go-karts consistently that I just had really hurt, and so it's just trying to keep the wolves back.
Yeah.
Like the dumbest one we've had recently is this lady got into she was, showed up at a race, and apparently it was chilly outside. So she walks over, we had a garbage can, had some garbage in it or something, right? And so she tried to light what was in it.
Oh my God.
So she poured gasoline in it, right? And then reached over and then lit it. Well, guess what happened? Right?
Yeah.
$700,000 this lady got for torching her face.
That's crazy.
And those are the things that probably keep me up more than anything does. It's just anybody gets a boo-boo nowadays, and they want to run to Why We Cheat 'Em and How attorneys. So that's where we sit. So, hey, all of you that are out there that are floating around the sport, take an interest in your local facility. Point out anything, point out fencing that's broken, point out anything, don't go out and stand next to the freaking racetrack. You don't need to be standing there. Just go behind the fence where you belong, right? Do the things, contribute to the safety of the sport. Get yourself a new helmet, right? Keep people from doing stupid stuff. And, so that's what my day-to-day is a lot like, Emory, is really, trying to guide the sport on the backside and, in various ways. And STARS is one of them. Actually, what I found is STARS is probably one of the best things I could have ever done to get the word out, because now if like Alex, you would not have contacted me saying, "Hey, Joe, nobody really knows who you are, but you do insurance for a lot of racetracks. You want to come on the podcast?" Right? But this is interesting because this gives me a little bit of a better platform.
Yeah.
To communicate in a broad sense, and so I appreciate that. But this is a real downer, man. When we start talking about this kind of stuff, it's no fun. So
yeah.
I'll
Completely
try
agree.
I'll try not to ask anything else about it.
Yeah, so I hope that didn't kind of drag down the program quite a bit. So now you guys know why I really need a creative outlet, because that shit can get you down every day. So.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating though, and I guess
for a law major, it's fascinating for a law major. So
I don't want to hear it. Anyways, though, I mean, how much has that changed over the last 20, basically the last 20 or 30 years since you've kind of been around it? How much has it changed kind of your thinking on it, and also the karting industry as a whole, in terms of, people making changes, people having the outright ability to sue, and also, I guess, track's receptiveness to kind of what you guys have gone around with in the track safety standards over the last couple decades?
Man, how much has changed? Not enough. Honestly, to be fair, I mean, not enough. It's kind of this is a deep conversation into try not to show my white hair too much, right? This is kind of a deep conversation. It's actually I'm very, very much involved in right now, kind of behind the scenes, because we are sort of guided and mandated to a certain extent by carriers, and so we have to. It hasn't been enough. Now, I will say, kart safety has improved immeasurably.
Yeah.
Right. Probably in an order of magnitude. I mean, I used to make fun of my dad, because I'm I would look at pictures of the first kart that I drove. We talked about it earlier, right? And I'm looking at this thing going you put your 8-year-old kid in this thing? This is terrible. So So kart safety is probably the biggest thing, and tracks have gotten a lot better. They really have. We're probably still a little bit lax in general as a sport. We could do better on the fencing. We could do better at kind of controlling people moving in and out of places. But hey, look, I know we can talk about insurance stuff all day long. I don't know about you guys. I really want to see what Terlecki has to say. So, he's not at a ball game this time, from what I gather. Right. So why don't we get the old guy off of here and get the young hot shoe in here instead.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, to say the least, it's been a pleasure having you on, and I think speaking for Little Red here under me and Alex, it's been really good and been super informative to pick your brain for the last hour or so. So we really appreciate your time. Seriously.
No.
Anytime. If you guys are ever like, hey, we don't think anybody's gonna you guys also have me up against a presidential debate, by the way. So I mean, if there was like AJ Myers presidential debate, I don't think anybody's gonna watch this thing. But anytime you guys ever want me on, you just let me know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. We appreciate you.
Thank you, buddy.
See you guys.
Thanks, Joe.
Appreciate you too.
All right. Well, that's been Joe Janowski. It doesn't get much cooler than that. I think we learned a lot and definitely had a bunch of laughs out of it too. We're gonna take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Joe kind of announced it for us, but Nick Terlecki is going to join us on the show. So first and foremost, word from AKR.
Brandon, why are there all these charges for just over $200 from Acceleration Kart Racing's website?
That's because AKR gives you free shipping on orders of $200 or more within the continental U.S.
Okay, but I thought you were just getting a pair of gloves. That's what, $70?
But if I'm getting a new pair of gloves, I might as well get a new pair of shoes to match. And then on top of that, I'll get a neck brace because with the shipping, it's basically free.
Yeah, I do not think the math checks out on that.
Everything you need, all in one place and shipped to your door for free for orders of $200 or more. Exclusions apply. Spend responsibly. Shop AKR.com.
Emory really changed the lights for this segment. Goodness gracious, guys.
Hey,
Why red?
Why not red? It's snazzy.
Well,
Actually, I was gonna go red. I was gonna go red from the get-go, but the lights outside were bringing in too much natural light, so it looked weird. Now they look sick.
Well, that being said, Joe alluded to it earlier, but Nick Terlecki, welcome to the show, buddy. Nick, first of all, we tried to have you on the show a while back. You're at a Cubs game. You're not at a game today, so thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, and I think I kept you in the green room longer than I thought you were going to be in there. So sorry about that. And I know you work early in the mornings usually, so you've been up for quite a long time. So we're going to try to make this short and to the point here. But you're the points leader in OKN Stars. First of all, how cool did that feel?
I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, I've been, I just love the OKN and I feel really confident in it. Probably would have been, a little bit further of a gap for the points from, the Charlotte incident. But I mean, I was able to bring it back on the pole and then, the huge win in Newcastle. So that really helped. And then just, keeping the consistency. So feeling pretty confident going into, this weekend.
You've been in the sport for a good amount of time here. For those watching back at home that maybe don't know your background in the sport, talk to us about how you got into the sport of karting.
I started about 9.5 years ago. My dad just loved NASCAR and kind of wanted me to, be there. And so he just got me my first go-kart. And I remember actually being at, Norway, Concept Haulers, and, just making my first couple laps there, been the wall. Literally didn't even make a first lap before side swiping right into the wall, but, learned from that. But, I've just been, racing for a while and, moved up to senior and, staying in the X30 class a few years ago. And racing against all these veterans. So super hard competition.
How do you feel like your development's been over the years? You've been always the driver at the top of their class. Do you feel like you've progressed as quick as everybody else, maybe faster than some other drivers around you?
I would say probably progressed faster because, most of the people that I raced against have started years before I did. I started when I was just about 10 years old, and I mean, kind of had to get that jump to where I was. I mean, I was basically behind in, the sport of racing. Everyone starts when they're 5 and, super young. So kind of just had to play to catch up. But, now I feel like, I'm there and I'm competing against these guys for the win. And I mean, it feels really good.
You mentioned, discovering like that X30 class a couple years ago. Past couple years, you've really been a main contender, I'd say, in the 125 senior class, whether it's X30 or OKN Stars. Why do you feel like, especially this past year and a half, 2 years, you've really made that leap into you're a race-winning contender almost every weekend you go out to the racetrack?
Yeah, I mean, before I was doing, I was all in the KA and then K, and then when I was doing K and OK last year, and then the K just, I mean, started to get really crazy, and we decided to switch to X30, and both being on the same tire compound, and it's just that consistency of just kind of improving quicker with it and being more feeling confident in it. And I mean, that's ever since getting out of K and just staying in the full, and I mean in the 125 cc's, I mean, have just really helped me stay consistent. And I mean, yeah, like you said, I mean, race winning contender at most of these races.
You're a Midwestern guy. Ever since you were young, you were with Franklin for a minute. You've been with Holtz for a while. What's your relationship been like with the Holtz family and Josh specifically?
I mean, love Josh, super great. Always a great team to be with. I mean, the support they give me, always making sure I got what I need to stay at the front and get to the front has, I mean, it's just helped me tremendously on and off the track. Whether it's just, Josh giving me the extra push, and Josh always knows I have the speed, just might lack a couple laps or whatever, but he's been a huge help to my development. And I mean, thus his name, Holtz Driver Development. So couldn't thank him for, any more than I am.
Do you ever get on Josh for being faster than him most of the time?
Almost every session, yeah. He gets on me when he's, within about a tenth, and then I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm slow then.
I remember, I literally remember Newcastle this year. I think he was in the lead of the race for probably like half a lap or a lap maybe, and then I remember him looking back at you and pointing to his helmet, like telling you to be smarter or to push or whatever. And I was like, dude, Nick is probably not going to wait behind Josh for more than like a lap or two. But yeah, and then he got stuck in as the race progressed. But I guess how was that at Newcastle? Because he was up there throughout the rain, and that guy was ripping, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, in the dry one, in the main event, when he did get to the lead, and I was kind of back behind him, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna, it's still super. These OKN races are super long, so we got to preserve the tires. But I was like, all right, well, I'm catching you, and typically I'm faster, so when I'm faster, I'm gonna try and get to the lead there. And then once I got around him, I mean, I kind of just drove away from everybody.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, Josh in the rain is just a different level. I mean, he was just untouchable in that heat race.
Yeah.
I think you're also a pretty good rain master, though. You're kind of shiesty in the rain. I mean, Josh was quick. I think he's a taller dude, so that's probably why. But do you think Josh has helped you out with your rain driving a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard for me being way shorter than he is. But
me and Alex can
let's not say way shorter here, because I was gonna say if you're short, then I'm like, oh man, it's over for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, I love rain racing. I mean, it's definitely way different driving ability than it is in the dry. But, Josh's skills of, him being super tall, but also him being able to just, confidently whip the go-kart in the rain has, definitely put an impact on me, and to, confidently drive the go-kart in the rain and just smooth is better.
Yeah, for
Emory,
sure.
Emory, I know your Wi-Fi is going crazy, but I think you're back, so I'm gonna let you ask your questions now in case you get booted here later on.
Yeah, I mean, who knows how much of this you guys are going to hear and how much I'm going to hear of Nick's response. But I mean, you've been talking about your rain development, but I kind of want to talk more on the racecraft side too, because, I really think since moving to X30, I feel like you've kind of been one of the least incident prone drivers. And not to say that you've had like a ton of incidents over the years, but I definitely think since like moving to KA in the first part, you've definitely cleaned up a bit. What do you think has kind of led to that growth as a driver? And I guess, like, how is your approach to racing different now than it was, say, maybe 3 or 4 years ago?
I mean, I mean, racing against these veterans, I mean, everyone, I had to earn the respect. I remember doing the Battle of the Brickyard race, my first ever X30 senior race, and I was, 15 years old. And that was in 2019. And I remember, I mean, I won the heat race, but I was just did not care. Like get to the lead basically is the mindset I had. But I mean, I wasn't making friends out there. And I remember Terlecki, yelling at me that I got to cut the junior driving, right, and earn some respect out there. So, since that, it's just over the years, it's just gotten better, and just wanting to make, friends and just drive smooth and earn the respect out there, because I hate being raced poorly against, getting side pod and drivers just sending it into a corner that they don't belong to be at in that moment. And so just driving smoother, and I mean, being the respect around the veterans, I mean, it's just better racecraft.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I mean, you've kind of alluded to Jamie Saraki there, and I know Alex talked about kind of your team history and whatnot, but at this point, if I'm not mistaken, it's going on almost 8 years where you've been either with Franklin and Jamie at the start, and then also Josh the last 5 years or so. And I mean, you've worked with Michael Geringer a good amount of those 7 years when you look back at it. Like, how much does it help to have kind of the continuity with the people you're working with, kind of the people looking at your data, the teammates you've had, and even kind of just the, I guess, team environment, the team culture that you've been with over the years?
I mean, I've been around the same people for super long, but, they also have been in the sport for twice the amount of time that I have been. So they have so much more, knowledge and experience than I do. And just, being around the same people for, basically almost my entire racing career has just super progressed on me. And I mean, I've got a lot of amazing people always on my back. Just, they always know I can get there. And if I'm just lacking a little bit, they're always there to, make sure I get there in some way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this weekend, right? I mean, you've had success before at the night fight, but now heading into a season finale where you are the points leader in a 125 class. Pressure on the line, I'd say, but are you feeling pressure, or now because the speed's there, do you feel like, what, this is just another race for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling confident, not going to let the pressure get to me. It's just another race, just a more important race. I'm looking at it more of, every point matters in the scenario. I mean, I kind of had the little bit of experience, if anything, I had a little bit of a warm up from the shootout 2 weekends ago where every point mattered. And I mean, I kind of failed at it, but it was a little bit of like a wake up call, kind of going into this weekend where every single point matters. So I think, I was just calm and, I'm ready.
I mean, you had the experience going night racing 2 weeks ago a little bit. What do you like more, daytime, nighttime?
The nighttime. I mean, there's just something about just everything looks cooler. And I mean, if anything, the lights are kind of blinding at times, but I way prefer night racing than over the day.
Yeah. And I guess, Nick, to I guess move on here just a little bit for you. I mean, with AJ, we didn't ask him about how it was too much, dealing with the job and then racing at the same time. But for you, I think you're one of the younger guys as well, who's, you're working full time. I think every single day of the week, if I'm not mistaken, 6 days or 5 days out of the week. Is that correct? So, yeah. I mean, you're still working, you got to wake up tomorrow and put your boots on or whatever and go to work as well. So how has that been kind of, managing a little bit of both at while still trying to race and spend some quality time with your dad?
I mean, obviously at the track as always with my dad, which is super great. I mean, even at work, I mean, that's who I work for. But even, like this weekend, for example, I mean, yesterday I put in 12 hours and today I put in 11. So it's just another, tomorrow I leave. I have a late evening flight out to North Carolina, but I'm still going to get a bunch of hours in. And then I can even do some remote work, which is what I'm going to be doing. I mean, it's super. This is where racing at night is nice because it allows me to, get online in the morning, before, I mean, my first session on Thursday is not till like 3 something.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, always being up at 5:15 every morning. So it's like, it's just something that I'm going to wake up naturally no later than 6. So, I can just work online, but it's just something where I can kind of split the difference where, all right, I got the work mindset. And then once racing starts, I mean, I'm kind of, focused on that, and then heavy hitting.
Yeah, and as well, I feel like your preparation for those races as well is a little bit different than a lot of others. A lot of guys spend a lot of time in their tents and reviewing data, but you're a guy that kind of keeps to himself a whole lot. We joked around a little bit. I was looking for you all over the paddock trying to get your headshots done, and you're sitting in your hauler, just chilling out, sitting in the AC or watching a movie or whatnot. And as well, like whenever you show up to races, you show up the day of, the morning of, or whatnot, and you get straight to the point, and then once you're off the track, you go back in the hauler and you sit there and do whatever you do, But so how is that like? And I guess what's your mindset into races like that and times where you're not on the racetrack?
I mean, these last couple of races have been super hot. So having the RV and I just want to be in the AC. I mean, I'm outside already every single day. So if I don't need to be outside any more than just being on track, then that's kind of like my getaway. But it's also just relaxing. And I mean, we were able to, watch some of the racing too, from on top of the RV or through the windshield. I mean, MCC has a super nice RV setup.
Yeah.
To just roll up the window shade and you can just watch the racing. But yeah, I mean, it's just nice to split off for like after those sessions and just cool down and then, get ready again for the next session.
I'm still terrified of that ladder on your RV. It's narrow. I'm like, oh man. Kaleb, have you been on his RV before?
No, but I did threaten to go there and rip the door off if he didn't go and do the headshots like in 5 minutes. I was literally calling him and I was like, Nick, dude, I came over here. You said you were coming to wherever our building was that we were doing the headshots, and you said you were going to be there half an hour ago. I'm going to come to your RV. Like Josh told me you're here. And that's the closest I got to it. Was like knocking on the door, like seeing where Nick was. But no, I've never actually been in it. But it is, I think, even standing up there, I see your dad and I think your sister as well that stand up there during races. And it's just like there's no railings on the side. So I don't think I'd like personally go up there and watch a race from there. I'm terribly afraid of heights as well. So
it's the ladder that gets you, man. I almost missed a session at MCC because I was trying to get down from it. I was like, dude, like, oh man, this is brutal.
You're just stuck up there?
Yeah, I'm not even afraid of heights either. I didn't want to fall off the ladder. So.
Oh god.
Oh man.
Nick, you're one of, I'd say, the few guys that have done all three of the KA, OK, and X30 side of things, at least all in the same year, basically. Going back to last year as well. You alluded to driving standards a little bit earlier on, but I don't want to get too much into the standards of it. But what have you noticed driving differences through the three classes are, and what it takes to kind of win in each?
I mean, the K is very high pace, high fast moving. I mean, you can just throw a pass in and you still have the bottom end to get you, and it's really similar to X30. But the OK, I mean, there's just no bottom end, and so you just have to be a lot more patient in there. I mean, especially if you want to get to the front. I mean, patience is key. Everyone's bound to make some mistake at some point, even if you guys are the same pace. But you just make that one super late pass and OK, and now you got half of the field back on your back bumper. So that's kind of where I would say the biggest difference is between K moving through the OK is just that patience.
Yeah,
we're getting to the end of this interview, and I know you're probably happy about that because you want to get to bed soon. You texted me saying that you want it to be done before 9:30 Eastern. So we'll wrap this up shortly here, bud. But how much we talked about it a little bit earlier on in the show, and we kind of know where your head's at heading into the weekend. But how much of a confidence booster is it, going up against the big guns? And I'd say you're one of the top dogs in the class now, both X30, OK, and KA, whatever class you're racing at the time. How much of a confidence booster is it now? You kind of walk into the racetrack and know that you're one of the guys they got their eyes on.
I mean, it's super nice, but I don't really see it that way. I kind of see it more of just, focusing on myself and just trying to be, the best on track and off track that I can and just kind of maintaining at the front. But, going into this weekend, I think, it's going to be, pretty challenging. Paulie has probably more laps than anyone I could ever think of at this track. So, I can expect him to be really good. And, he's obviously one of the guys in the championship running. So I think it's going to be a really good race. Really long races. I feel like, I just feel like these laps are just going to feel like endless with, 25 laps at, GoPro and just so many laps. And and just winding down the ticker as last race in the event, and every position matters. So I think it's going to be a really good weekend. Feeling really confident, and really no pressure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been year number 1 of the Pro Show. We've seen kind of some changes to the format, but ultimately kind of the same idea. As a driver that is running in one of the pro classes that ran a good amount of it last year, as well, ran the full OKN calendar, how do you assess the changes to the calendar this year, and what do you think some of the steps forward next year and years beyond could be?
I mean, obviously we're going to stick to the OKN next year. I mean, it's by far my favorite engine I've ever ran. It's just something about, I mean, it's not really faster top speed, of course. I mean, X30 definitely has 5 more miles an hour on the top end, but it's just a lot faster pace, and everything's going by way quicker, which is something I love. So obviously next year we're going to be doing stars again for the OKN, and then doing all of X30 as well next year. So, I mean, I had some unfortunate engine breaks towards the end of this season, which kind of hurt my standings for Pro Tour and USPKS. But I'm feeling really confident going into next year, and hopefully I can definitely be in the top 3, if not 1 for at least one of the series. To
bounce off of what Emory was asking, I think what he was trying to get at was, what's kind of your viewpoint on how much did you enjoy, the pro show aspect of it all when you ran the pro classes versus years past?
Got it. Got it. I mean, I super like the timeline. If anything, I just wish there was just one more racing, for stars. I feel like we get cut, a little bit short, especially being, the pro show. I just kind of feel like more eyes should be on us, which I like how they did, putting us at the end. I mean, I get to watch all the other racing and not feeling rushed. Same with X30. I mean, X30 is at the end of the, end of the weekend. The last session. So it's nice to see all the classes. Yeah, I mean, I like the format a lot, and I really like racing later in the day, especially this weekend. Night racing is by far my favorite. If anything, for formats, I think I really like Stars' format with just the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, we're all pro, especially for the pro class. I mean, we're all pro drivers, thus the name, right? I mean, if you kind of can't get it dialed in, in the 3 sessions like Star has, I really don't agree with, Thursday practice, but I mean, it also saves, a couple $1,000s, for my dad, which is huge, especially racing all year. I mean, anything helps, right? And it's just, I mean, I feel like I just prefer, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that's why I love the Stars calendar and, their format. So.
Yeah, we agree heavily on that. I guess we could say 3.
Yeah,
I think, you got to be on it from usually that's how it tends to play out. Whenever you're on it, and if not, it maybe doesn't get better until late in the weekend, and even then it could be a little bit too late.
Well, I think if the boys are done, we're gonna give you the chance here, bud. To kind of sleep. Yeah, get you some sleep. But first, shout yourself out here. Where can people find you on socials? And besides Night Fight, what's next for you? What's next for the Hotes boys? Floor is yours, bud.
Yeah, I mean, my social is just, Nick Terlecki 188 on Instagram. And then next year, the Hotes guys and me are kind of, like I said, doing the Star Series, OKN, and then the Winter Series. So kind of just racing all year long, kind of the same schedule I did this year. Might pick up a couple of CKNA races next year, testing out the new Happy Cart that I did a couple weeks ago for Ryan Sporowski. And Happy, I mean, that cart was just different. I mean, everything was just hand built, hand welded, and definitely, something super different. So I'm super excited that, they came with this idea, and I mean, they're doing great at it. So that'll be, added to the calendar for next year. So a lot of racing.
I'm going to interrupt you here. So does that mean you're doing CKNA Grands at the end of the year, October 11th?
It actually got sold out at like 90.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So with the idea of it, it was just like really late. I mean, that sold out super quick.
Yeah.
So otherwise, yeah, I would have been racing on the Happy Cart.
Nice. Well, that's a whole another episode for another day, Nick. But yeah, great to hear from you, to say the least.
Yeah, thank you guys. I mean, I appreciate being on whenever you guys need me, and not at a sports game.
Or
Thanks,
earlier
Nick.
in the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, earlier in the episode.
All right,
All
bud.
right.
I'll let you get some sleep.
See you guys.
See you,
in a couple
Nick.
days, bud. All right. Well, give a round of applause to Nick Terlecki here. Thank you for joining us on the show. If you're still here watching in the green room, so it's been a long episode, but it's been a good episode. I mean, before we sign this thing off, I mean, what was your guys' biggest takeaway? I'll start with you, Emory, from the whole show. Especially, let's talk about the Joe interview. I think is particular.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really do think like Joe's got such a unique perspective on the sport, and I found it interesting his parallels between kind of how Skusa grew in the mid to late '90s and how that kind of mindset has stayed similar in the mid or the late 2010s, early 2020s now, and continuing to develop stars as a series, even though the whole landscape and dynamic of United States karting is so different than it was back then. At the end of the day, karting can be just like life. It can be like any sort of business idea. When you have kind of a creative mindset, when you look with forward thinking ideas, you don't get complacent. You don't do things just because that's the way they've been done. A series will continue to grow. And I think from both AJ and Nick's interview, you can gather the enthusiasm that they have for the series and for kind of what Stars has done with Night Fight, with kind of an AJ's end, the amount of clients that are racing with Magic. You're talking about on average 18 drivers under the tent, which is amazing to see. And on Nick's end, obviously, kind of being enthusiastic about the OKN experience. So, I mean, I think it really just shows the work that Stars has put in, and it also shows the work that Joe as an individual has done for the sport of karting. Because I mean, he plays himself down a lot. He'll kind of talk down on his own intellect and whatever. I mean, the dude is clearly knows what he's doing, and he's had a lot of success, and not just a lot of success, but a lot of success in different areas and different facets that require kind of different layers of thinking. And I think I know I kind of got a little bit nerdy about it at the end of that segment, but the NKA stuff, it all goes under the radar. Like there's so much beyond or behind the scenes that we could have
sure.
hours and hours of talking about it that no one wants to hear that stuff, but it's critical. If we want to show up to the racetrack every weekend, you have to have insurance, bottom line. Otherwise it's just going to be a dearth of different lawsuits, and with that you need kind of developments and safety, and so all of that stuff is very important and it doesn't get covered. And so I like that side, and I also love the series building. But for me, I mean, this was a really good episode to showcase kind of what Stars has become, highlight some of the things that Joe has done in the sport, and ultimately, I mean, look, I mean, the guy's, to steal his own term that he used about 15 times, he's a badass. And I mean, he showed that tonight.
Yeah, no, for sure. And of course, Emory's going to be interested about law and lawsuits because he's a law major and whatnot. So I'll give Emory the benefit of the doubt there. But I really like picking Joe's brain on everything that took to making a series and on how things come about. Because I think one of the things that people always joke around is guys that have ideas and want to go like forth with whatever idea that they may have. But Joe's one of the guys that has actually done it, and you hear from all the guys that he has working with him, like Christian Marsh and a lot of others. It's a young, fresh group. I would almost say I'd compare it to the new kids on the block, and that's one of the biggest things that they've taken and ran with so far this year and throughout the years as well, since their start in really 2020 when Stars rebranded. But to say the least, they've done a great job to do some cool stuff. To do some cool stuff and to be different and to add a sense of freshness to our sport. So big from them, and great to hear from Joe, and as well from AJ. Hearing his story a little bit, and for Nick as well, hearing Nick's story and his mindset going into the weekend, to say the least.
Yeah, that was all three interviews. I think gave us pretty incredible insight on the driving aspect from two guys who lead the point series in their respective classes, and Shifter Stars and OKN Stars heading into the finale, and then the guy that runs it all, right, himself, Christian Marsh. I mean, for Joe in particular, I think he really, like you mentioned, Emory, it was a really good point. He's a guy that maybe will downplay himself, but at the end of the day, there's a reason why he's been successful in every facet that he's been a part of, right? So for Joe, really incredible to talk to him. Nonetheless, this has been episode 26. It's been a long episode, but it's been a good one. This has been Casey Grid Talk. For myself, Alexander Searle, Kaleb Vieska, Emory Lida.
Intramural
see
pickleball
you.
coming up next for me. Gonna be
You got a pickleball game?
Intramural pickleball. First game of
Tonight?
the season.
Look at
Tonight,
this guy.
just now. It's gonna start at 9:15. Doubleheader coming our way. Me and my roommate Cole Limo gonna go at it against we don't know who yet. The Pickles canceled on us earlier today, so we got one more game from our doubleheader later tonight. So I'm excited. Get that going, and
right.
excited to be back for Grid Talk Tuesday, boys. It's always a good time with you guys. Round of applause
what's-
for episode.
Round of
I
applause.
lost
Hey,
count.
what's the pickleball team name?
CYP. It's the abbreviation of my hometown. So yeah,
Nice.
so
All
creative.
right.
So creative.
Beautiful. All right. Well, good
Not
luck
quite
with
the
that.
fantasy name.
All right.
All right. This has been episode 26 of KC Grid Talk. We'll see you guys next week.